Crash on the ice world. The darkness outside the ship was endless. A frozen world stretched below, covered in thick layers of ice and snow. Ethan Carter gripped the controls, his hands sweating inside his gloves. His ship was falling fast, too fast. "Come on, hold together," he muttered, trying to stabilize the descent. The ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed across the control panel. The engines had failed. He had lost communication hours ago. No one knew he was here. No one was coming to save him. The ground rushed toward him. Ethan braced for impact. Boom! The crash sent ice and snow flying in all directions. The ship skidded across the frozen ground, metal screeching, sparks flying. Finally, it stopped. Silence filled the air. Ethan groaned. His body ached, but he was alive. He unbuckled his harness and pushed himself up. The ship's cockpit was damaged beyond repair. The glass was cracked, and cold air was already seeping in. He pressed a button on his wrist device. No signal. The emergency beacon wasn't working. Great. Just great. He grabbed his survival pack and forced the hatch open. A blast of freezing wind hit his face. He shivered. The planet was colder than he had expected. His suit could only protect him for so long. The landscape was endless white, broken only by jagged ice formations. There was no sign of life, no shelter, just an endless, frozen wasteland. Ethan had to move. Staying near the wreckage was dangerous. There could be fires, radiation leaks, or worse. He needed to find higher ground and send a distress signal. His boots crunched against the ice as he walked. The cold cut through his suit. Every breath was painful. He checked his oxygen levels. 60% left. He wouldn't last long. After walking for nearly an hour, exhaustion set in. His limbs were numb, and his vision blurred. The storm was getting worse, and snow swirled around him. Then he saw it. A dark shape moved in the storm. Something was out there. Ethan stopped. His heart pounded. Was it an animal? An alien? Something worse. The shape moved closer. A tall figure, humanoid but not human. Glowing white eyes stared at him through the blizzard. Ethan's instincts screamed danger. He reached for his sidearm, but hesitated. The figure wasn't attacking. It was just watching. Then suddenly, Ethan's legs gave out. The cold was too much. He collapsed onto the ice. His vision faded. The last thing he saw was the alien stepping toward him. Then, darkness. The alien's betrayal of its own kind. Darkness surrounded Ethan. His body felt weightless, floating between sleep and wakefulness. A sharp breath filled his lungs. Cold. Pain. His body ached all over. His eyes snapped open. He was no longer outside. A soft blue glow flickered on the icy walls. A cave. He lay on a surface that felt strangely warm, a contrast to the freezing world outside. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. Ethan tried to sit up, but his muscles refused to cooperate. His body was too weak, too drained from the cold. Then he noticed something. He wasn't alone. A figure sat nearby, watching him. Ethan's heart pounded as he got a clearer look at his rescuer. The alien was tall and lean, its skin a pale shade of ice blue, smooth and almost translucent under the dim light. Its eyes glowed white, sharp and unreadable. It didn't move. It just observed. Why hadn't it killed him? Ethan licked his dry lips, trying to form words. Where am I? His voice came out rough and weak. The alien tilted its head slightly, as if considering whether to answer. Then, in a voice that was deep but oddly smooth, it spoke. You should not be alive. That wasn't exactly comforting. Ethan forced himself to sit up. His head spun, and his body screamed in protest, but he ignored it. Yeah, well, thanks, I guess. The alien didn't react. Its gaze was unsettling. Too intelligent, too knowing. Ethan glanced around. The cave walls were smooth, unnatural, not something carved by nature. He spotted strange devices embedded in the ice, faintly pulsing with energy. This wasn't just a cave. It was a Voran outpost. His stomach twisted. Vorans, he'd heard of them before, a brutal warrior race that hated humans. If he was in their territory, he was in deep trouble. His eyes snapped back to the alien. Was it a Voran? The alien seemed to sense his fear. It finally moved, standing up in one fluid motion. It was taller than any human, its movements eerily precise. "You are lucky I found you before the others." ***. Ethan frowned. "Others?" The alien's expression didn't change. "The Voran patrols. If they find you, they will kill you." A chill ran down Ethan's spine, and this time it wasn't from the cold. "Then, why didn't you?" The alien didn't answer right away. Its glowing eyes locked onto his, and for a moment there was silence. Then it spoke again, its voice quieter. "Because I have already betrayed my kind." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Betrayed. The alien stepped closer. Ethan fought the urge to back away. It studied him carefully before speaking again. "I am Zurek. I saved you. But if my people find out..." The alien hesitated for the first time. "They will not be merciful." Ethan exhaled slowly, trying to process everything. Zurek had broken the rules of his own kind to help a human. That wasn't normal. Vorans didn't just help people like him. This meant one thing. Zurek had just put himself in danger for Ethan's sake. Ethan's mind raced. His emergency beacon wasn't working. Vorans were searching for him. His chances of survival were already slim, and now his only ally was an alien outcast who had risked everything to save him. Why? He wanted to ask, but before he could, Zurek stiffened. His head turned sharply toward the cave entrance. Ethan followed his gaze. In the distance, beyond the icy walls, faint shadows moved through the blizzard. Zurek turned back to Ethan, his voice urgent now. "We need to leave. They are coming. The deadly hunt begins." The cave's eerie blue glow flickered as a gust of wind howled through the entrance. Ethan felt his breath hitch. Shadows moved outside, silent, predatory. Zurek's glowing white eyes locked onto Ethan's. "We need to move. Now." Ethan's body ached from the cold, but there was no time to rest. He forced himself up, his limbs trembling from exhaustion. Zurek moved with an unnatural grace, almost soundless, his tall frame barely making a whisper against the ice-covered ground. Ethan followed, his boots crunching loudly against the frozen floor. Too loud. Zurek spun, his gaze sharp. "Step carefully. Sound travels fast here." Ethan clenched his jaw, nodding. He had no idea what Voran hunters were capable of, but he had no intention of finding out. Outside, the blizzard raged, the wind screaming like a living thing. The cold slammed into Ethan the moment he stepped out of the cave, stealing his breath. But the true danger wasn't the weather. It was the Voran hunters. Zurek moved first, leading them across the frozen wasteland. Ethan struggled to keep up. Every breath was a battle against the cold, and every step felt like his body was wading through thick ice. He glanced over his shoulder. Shapes were moving in the distance. Tall figures, almost blending into the storm. They weren't running. They didn't need to. They were tracking. Hunting. Vorans were patient killers. They knew Ethan and Zurek would get tired long before they did. Ethan's heart pounded. They were being herded. "They're closing in," he whispered. Zurek didn't look back. "I know." The Vorans had the advantage. They knew the terrain, and they had the numbers. Zurek had mentioned being an outcast. Ethan didn't know how bad that made things until now. If the Vorans found them, Zurek wouldn't just be punished. He would be executed for treason. The storm thickened, swirling ice and snow into a blinding curtain. Visibility was nearly zero, but Zurek seemed to know the way. He moved with purpose, leading them toward jagged ice formations, a place to hide. Ethan followed, his lungs burning. Then, a deep guttural sound echoed through the storm. Ethan froze. That wasn't the wind. Zurek cursed under his breath. They released the hounds. Ethan's blood ran cold. Hounds. As if in answer, a piercing howl cut through the storm, closer this time. It was an unnatural sound, metallic and alive at the same time. Ethan didn't need an explanation. Something was hunting them. Zurek moved faster. Don't stop. We have seconds. Ethan didn't argue. He forced his legs to keep moving, stumbling over the ice as the howls grew closer. Then, a shape burst through the storm. Ethan barely had time to react. A massive four-legged creature leaped toward them, its metal-covered body reflecting the icy light. Voran hound, half biological, half machine. A killing machine. Its eyes locked onto Ethan. It lunged. Zurek moved faster than humanly possible. His arm shot out, a flash of energy whipping through the air. Crack. The hound crashed into the ice, its metallic skull split open. A strange blue liquid leaked from its body as it twitched once, then went still. Zurek didn't stop. He grabbed Ethan's arm. Run. Ethan barely had time to breathe before another deep howl filled the air. More were coming. They sprinted toward the jagged ice formations, Ethan's lungs burning with every step. The wind was against them, pushing them back. The Voran hunters were right behind them now, moving faster, closing in. Ethan could hear their heavy boots crunching against the ice. Then suddenly, Zurek veered left, pulling Ethan with him. A massive crevasse yawned before them. A sheer drop into darkness. Ethan skidded to a stop, inches from the edge. The wind howled up from below. It was a death trap. Zurek turned, his eyes flashing. Jump. Ethan's stomach dropped. Are you insane? Zurek grabbed his arm. It's the only way. The Vorans were nearly on top of them. There was no time. Ethan took a deep breath, then leaped. Cold air swallowed him. The world spun. For a moment, he thought he was falling to his death. Then, a strong hand caught him. Zurek had landed first, grabbing onto a narrow ledge below. With unnatural strength, he pulled Ethan toward him, pressing them against the ice. Above them, the Voran hunters skidded to a stop at the edge of the crevasse. For a long, tense moment, they waited, unmoving, silent. Then, slowly, the hunters turned away, vanishing into the storm. Ethan barely exhaled before Zurek muttered, "They'll be back. And next time, we won't be this lucky." Surviving the frozen wasteland. The ledge was narrow, barely wide enough for both of them. Ethan pressed his back against the ice wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The fall had nearly killed him, but it had also saved him. For now. Above, the Voran hunters were gone, at least for the moment. The wind howled over the frozen wasteland, covering any sounds of their retreat. But Ethan knew better than to believe they had given up. They were patient hunters. They would return. Zurek moved first, scaling the icy wall like it was nothing. Ethan clenched his jaw and forced himself to follow. His fingers were numb, his limbs heavy from exhaustion. But there was no choice. Survive or die. After a grueling climb, they reached another flat stretch of ice. Ethan collapsed onto his knees, his lungs burning from the effort. The cold had seeped into his bones, making every movement feel sluggish. Zurek turned toward him. "We cannot stay out here." Ethan exhaled sharply. No kidding. The Vorans were out there, tracking them. And now, Ethan had a new problem. His oxygen levels were dangerously low. His wrist device flickered, warning him with a blinking red light. 20% remaining. Zurek noticed. His glowing white eyes narrowed slightly. "You will not last long without shelter." Ethan clenched his fists. He already knew that. Zurek motioned toward the horizon, where jagged ice formations rose in strange, unnatural patterns. A ruined structure lay half-buried in the ice. It wasn't natural. It was Voran-made. Ethan hesitated. That's an outpost. Zirek nodded. An abandoned one. If the Vorons have not scavenged it, there may still be supplies inside. Ethan wasn't sure how he felt about breaking into a Voron facility, but he didn't have a choice. His oxygen was running out. His body was failing. He would die in the open. Without another word, they moved. Every step was a struggle against the biting wind. The snow had thickened, making visibility near impossible. Ethan's fingers had gone completely numb, and his suit's temperature regulator was failing. By the time they reached the outpost, Ethan was barely holding on. His vision blurred. His steps wavered. The darkness crept at the edges of his mind, pulling him under. Zirek grabbed his arm. "Stay awake." Ethan tried. He really did. But the moment they reached the outpost's entrance, his knees buckled. Everything went black. A Voron ghost. Ethan woke up to warmth. It was the first thing he noticed, the absence of the freezing cold that had gripped his body for hours. He was still shivering, but not as violently. Slowly, he opened his eyes. Dim blue lights flickered across the walls. Voron technology. He was inside the outpost. He tried to sit up, but a firm hand pressed him back down. "Zirek, you need rest," the Voron said, his voice as emotionless as ever. Ethan ignored him and sat up anyway. His head spun. He took a deep breath, then another, until the dizziness faded. Zirek watched him carefully. His glowing eyes reflected the dim light, making it impossible to read his expression. Ethan glanced around. The outpost was ancient, forgotten by time. Voron technology pulsed faintly along the walls, flickering with an unsteady glow. The air was breathable but stale. He glanced at his wrist device. Oxygen supply. Stable. Zirek had saved him. Again. Ethan let out a breath and leaned against the wall. "So, Voron tech still works, huh?" Zirek didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward a control panel covered in frost, brushing the ice away with a slow, careful motion. Strange symbols blinked on the screen. "The Vorons abandoned this place long ago," Zirek said. "It was once a listening post, a place to monitor enemy movement." Ethan frowned. "Enemy movement? You mean humans?" Zyrek's expression didn't change, among others. Ethan studied him carefully. Zirek was foreign, but something about him felt different. Why had he saved a human? Why had he risked everything? Ethan had too many questions, but before he could ask, the control panel let out a low warning chime. Zirek stiffened. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What was that? Zyrek's jaw tightened. He turned toward Ethan, his voice lower now. "A patrol drone. The Vorons know we are here. Nowhere left to run." Ethan felt his blood go cold. They had to move. Now. Zirek spun toward another console, his fingers moving quickly over Voron controls. The screen flickered, then shut down completely. Zirek turned to Ethan. "We must leave before they arrive." Ethan ran a hand over his face. "And go where?" Zirek didn't hesitate. "I have a plan." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Yeah, a plan that doesn't end with us dead." Zyrek's glowing white eyes met his. "No guarantees." Ethan let out a slow, frustrated breath. He glanced at the outpost's entrance, then back at Zirek. He didn't like trusting an alien, especially one from a species that saw humans as enemies. But Zirek had saved his life. Twice. That had to count for something. Ethan gritted his teeth and nodded. "Fine. Let's do this." Footsteps echoed outside. The Vorons had arrived. And there was no turning back. The Vorons close in. A deep mechanical hum filled the air. The sound reverberated through the walls of the abandoned outpost, sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. Zirek's glowing eyes flickered toward the entrance. The Vorons were here. Ethan clenched his fists. There was no escape route. They were cornered in a crumbling Voron outpost, hunted by an elite force that wouldn't stop until they were dead. Zurek moved quickly, retrieving a small Voran energy blade from a hidden compartment in the wall. The sleek weapon pulsed with a soft blue glow. Ethan watched him, tension thick in the air. Got any more of those? Zurek didn't look up. You wouldn't know how to use it. Ethan huffed. Yeah, well, I'd rather try than just stand here and get shot. Zurek hesitated for a moment, then reached into his belt and tossed Ethan a small Voran pistol. Ethan caught it, flipping it in his hands. It was cold, unnervingly light. Outside, the footsteps stopped. The silence was worse. Zurek's gaze darkened. They're waiting. Ethan frowned. Waiting for what? Before Zurek could answer, a sharp metallic clang echoed through the outpost. The main door was sealing itself shut. Ethan's stomach dropped. They were being locked inside. Zurek cursed under his breath, moving to the nearest control panel. His fingers danced over Voran symbols, trying to override the system. Nothing. The Vorans had already hacked into the outpost's power grid. They had full control. Ethan took a shaky breath. We're trapped. Zurek didn't look up. No, but soon we will be. Then the lights cut out. Nowhere left to hide. A deep red glow pulsed from the walls. Voran emergency lights. The air hummed with static energy, like a storm was building inside the outpost. Then, a hiss. Ethan turned toward the entrance. The doors were opening. Not all at once, just enough to let something through. A Voran hunter stepped inside. It was taller than Zurek, its armor sleek and black, covered in glowing Voran runes. Unlike Zurek, this Voran wore a battle helmet, obscuring its face. It was followed by another, and another. Ethan tightened his grip on the Voran pistol. 3 heavily armed warriors against 2 fugitives. Not great odds. The lead Voran spoke in a deep, guttural voice. Zurek, you are a disgrace. Zurek didn't flinch. I expected no less from you, killer. Ethan barely processed the name before Killer raised an energy rifle and aimed it directly at Zurek's head. No warning. No hesitation. Just pure execution. Ethan acted without thinking. He fired. The pistol's plasma bolt struck Killer's weapon, knocking it aside just before he could pull the trigger. Killer snarled, his white eyes flashing beneath the helmet. He turned to Ethan. Now he had their full attention. Zurek moved fast. His energy blade ignited with a sharp hum. He lunged at the nearest Voran, striking low. The Voran barely had time to react before Zurek's blade slashed through his armor, sending him crashing to the ground. Ethan had no time to celebrate. Killer charge. Ethan barely dodged in time, rolling behind an overturned console as a plasma blast struck where he had just been standing. Zurek shouted, "Movi!" Ethan scrambled to his feet. Killer was fast. Too fast. His movements were calculated, not reckless like human soldiers. Ethan fired blindly, forcing Killer to dodge. But Vorans were built for war. Killer closed the distance in seconds. Ethan barely got his arms up before a fist slammed into his chest. The impact sent him flying. He crashed into a metal console, pain exploding through his ribs. His pistol slipped from his fingers. Killer loomed over him. The Voran commander raised his weapon. Ethan stared up, his mind screaming at him to move, but his body was frozen. He was too slow. Then Zurek was there. He intercepted Killer with a feral speed Ethan had never seen before. Their blades clashed, sending sparks flying. Killer snarled, his strength pushing Zurek back. But Zurek wasn't just fighting, he was furious. For the first time, Ethan saw something raw in Zurek's expression. This wasn't just survival. This was personal. A choice that cannot be undone. Ethan gasped for breath, forcing himself to stand. His ribs screamed in protest, but he ignored them. Killer and Zurek were locked in combat, their blades flashing in the dim red light. Every strike was precise, lethal. Then Killer feinted. Zurek moved to block. Too late. Killer's blade slashed across his side. Zurek stumbled. Ethan's stomach dropped. Killer moved in for the kill. His blade arched toward Zurek's throat. Ethan didn't think. He just acted. He lunged forward, grabbing his fallen pistol and firing point-blank into Killer's back. The plasma bolt ripped through the Voran commander's armor. Killer stiffened. His blade fell from his grasp. Slowly, he turned his head toward Ethan. Then he collapsed. Silence filled the room. Ethan's breaths came in ragged gulps. His hands shook. He had killed a Voran. Not just any Voran. A commander. Zurek pushed himself up, clutching his wound. His white eyes locked onto Ethan. And for the first time, Ethan saw something in Zurek's gaze that wasn't cold. Something like respect. Then the alarm blared. Zurek's voice was sharp. "We have to go. Now." Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed Zurek's arm, pulling him forward. Outside, more Vorans were coming. They weren't escaping. They were running straight into the final battle. Ethan's ultimate decision. The alarm screamed through the ruined outpost, a deep, warlike siren that sent vibrations through the frozen walls. The Vorans knew. Keeler was dead. And now, Ethan and Zurek were their next targets. Zurek was bleeding. Deep red streaks ran down his side, staining his normally pale blue skin. He stumbled slightly, pressing a hand against the wound. Ethan grabbed him, pulling him forward. "Come on. We have to move." The Voran outpost was already coming to life. Metallic clanks echoed through the halls. Doors opening, soldiers mobilizing. Ethan's heart pounded. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before the next wave of hunters arrived. Zurek gritted his teeth. There's another way out. Ethan didn't hesitate. Lead the way. They bolted down a dark corridor, the flickering blue lights barely illuminating their path. Ethan could feel his body aching from exhaustion, his lungs burning with every breath. But stopping meant death. A sharp metallic hiss made Ethan turn his head. A Voran drone shot out from a side hallway, its glowing red eye locking onto them. VZZZ. A bolt of blue energy slammed into the wall near Ethan's head. He ducked, instinctively raising his Voran pistol. One shot. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks. But the blast had alerted the others. Zurek cursed under his breath. "We are out of time." A loud voice echoed over the facility's speakers, cold, commanding, full of fury. "You will not leave this place alive." Ethan recognized the language. Voran. He didn't need a translation to understand the meaning. Zurek tensed. "That's General Velos." Ethan frowned. "Friend of yours?" Zyrek's expression darkened. "No, he is worse than Killer." The weight of the situation sank in. If Killer had been dangerous, Velos was worse. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Then let's make sure we don't stick around to meet him." The outpost's final secret. The corridors twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the structure. Ethan kept glancing at Zurek, noticing the way his steps were becoming slower, weaker. His wound wasn't just bad. It was getting worse. Ethan clenched his fists. Zurek had saved him. Twice. And now he was bleeding out because of it. He needed medical help. Fast. Suddenly, Zurek stopped. He placed a hand on the cold wall, pressing against a hidden panel. A low vibration filled the air as the wall shifted, revealing the hidden chamber. Ethan blinked. What the hell is this? Zurek stepped inside. An escape route. The chamber was small but filled with Voran technology. A single ship, half buried in ice, rested in the center. Its sleek, dark metal design pulsed with blue energy. Ethan let out a breath. That's a ship. Zurek nodded. One that still works. Hope surged through Ethan's chest. They had a way out. Then, another alarm blared. Zurek's eyes flashed. They'd locked onto us. Ethan cursed. They needed to move. Now. Zirek limped toward the ship, activating its controls. The engines hummed to life, bright energy flowing through the veins of the vessel. Ethan turned toward the corridor and froze. A figure stood at the entrance. General Velos. He was taller than Killer, his armor thicker, his presence like a shadow pressing against the walls. His eyes glowed with cold fury. And he wasn't alone. Behind him, 24 Voran soldiers raised their weapons. Ethan slowly lifted his Voran pistol. He was outnumbered. He knew it. Zirek knew it. Velos stepped forward. His voice was calm, confident. "You cannot win this, human." Ethan swallowed. "You sure about that?" Velos smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Surrender, and I will let you die quickly." Ethan clenched his jaw. His mind raced. Options. He needed options. Zirek spoke, his voice weaker but steady. "He won't surrender." Velos turned his gaze toward Zirek, his expression unreadable. "You shame our kind, betraying your own species for a human. You should have died in the snow." Zirek didn't flinch. "Maybe I should have." He took a step forward. "But I didn't." Velos's eyes narrowed. "Then I will correct that mistake." Ethan barely had time to react. Velos fired. Zirek moved. The plasma bolt slammed into Zirek's chest. The cost of betrayal. Time slowed. Ethan heard the shot, saw the impact. Zirek staggered back, his face twisting in pain. Then he fell. Ethan's vision blurred with rage. Everything else disappeared. He raised his pistol and fired. Not at Velos, but at the ship's power core. Boom! A shockwave blasted through the room as energy surged from the ship. The sudden explosion knocked the Voran soldiers back. Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed Zirek and dragged him toward the ship. His friend was barely conscious, his breathing shallow. Come on," Ethan muttered, forcing the ship's hatch open. Another shot rang out. Ethan barely dodged as plasma scorched past his head. Velos had recovered. He was already moving, his expression twisted in fury. Ethan slammed the ship's controls. The doors sealed shut. Velos's roar of rage was the last thing Ethan heard before the ship lurched into motion. The Voran outpost shrunk beneath them as they shot into the storm-filled sky. They had escaped. But Zirek wasn't moving. Ethan's chest tightened. He grabbed his wrist device, activating the medical scanner. Zirek's vitals were dropping. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Stay with me." The ship's AI flickered to life. "Incoming human distress beacon detected. Would you like to respond?" Ethan's head snapped up. A human ship. Nearby. Hope surged through him. He tightened his grip on Zirek's hand. "Hold on, buddy. We're getting out of here. Escape or sacrifice." The Voran ship shook violently as it punched through the thick clouds of the frozen planet's atmosphere. Ethan gripped the controls, trying to keep the ship steady as alarms blared in the cockpit. Behind him, Zirek lay still. His blue skin was now paler than before, his breathing shallow. The plasma wound on his chest still smoldered, the energy burns running deep. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Come on, man. Hold on." The ship's AI flickered. Incoming enemy vessels detected. Ethan's heart dropped. On the screen, 2 Voran interceptors were fast approaching, sleek black ships built for war. They weren't letting him go. Ethan scanned the system, his mind racing. The human distress beacon was close, but not close enough. The Vorans would reach him first. He gritted his teeth. Of course they would. He glanced back at Zirek. Unconscious. Dying. If the Vorans caught them now, they wouldn't just kill them. They'd make an example out of Zirek for betraying his people. Ethan wasn't going to let that happen. The Voran fleet arrives. B-E-E-E, B-E-E, B-E-E. The ship's warning system blared. Missile lock detected. Ethan's hands flew over the controls. The Vorans weren't waiting to board him. They were going to blow him out of the sky. A harsh voice cut through the radio. General Valus, surrender the traitor, human. Your life will be spared. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, and you'll just let me go. Valos's voice was cold. No, but I will make it quick. Ethan glanced at Zurich. He wasn't waking up. The ship's medical scan showed his vitals dropping fast. Ethan turned back to the controls, his mind racing. Think, damn it. The human rescue team was still 5 minutes away. He had to survive 5 minutes. The Voran interceptors opened fire. Bright blue plasma bolts streaked through space. Ethan rolled the ship hard to the right, dodging the first blast, but the second clipped the hull. The ship lurched violently. Smoke filled the cockpit. Ethan coughed, gripping the controls tighter. A quick glance at the damage report told him everything he needed to know. The ship wasn't going to last much longer. A desperate gamble. Ethan had one option left. He flicked on the ship's auto-navigation and set it toward the human distress beacon. Then, without a second thought, he unbuckled his harness and stood up. He ran to Zurich, pulling the Voran's barely conscious form onto his shoulders. The ship's AI chirped a warning. Manual override detected. Please confirm emergency evacuation. Ethan gritted his teeth. Confirm. The emergency hatch opened, revealing the cold void of space. Ethan strapped an oxygen mask onto Zurich's face, and then onto his own. Then, with no other choice left, he launched both of them into open space, the cold embrace of the void. The moment they left the ship, Ethan felt the sheer terror of free-floating in space. The Voran interceptors fired again. Ethan barely had time to look back before his stolen ship exploded into a ball of fire and metal. Gone. If he had stayed on board for even 1 second longer. He shook the thought away, clutching Zurich tightly. They were floating now, drifting, vulnerable. The Voran fleet was still there, hunting them. Ethan's oxygen levels were dropping fast. Zurich's, even worse. His vision blurred. Was this it? The last hope. A sudden flash of light erupted in the distance. Ethan blinked, trying to focus. Something was coming. Then, he saw it. A massive human warship dropped out of hyperspace. They had made it. The radio crackled. A calm but firm voice came through. Unidentified life signs detected. Confirm identity. Ethan forced his lips to move. Ethan Carter, requesting immediate retrieval. I have an injured Voran with me. Do you copy? A brief silence. Then, we copy, Ethan Carter. Hold tight. We've got you. Bright white lights cut through the darkness as the ship's tractor beam locked onto them, pulling them in. Ethan exhaled. They were safe. A debt between two worlds. Ethan woke up in a mid-bay. The air was warm. His body no longer felt frozen. His vision adjusted to the bright lights above him. He turned his head. Zurich was there. The Voran was hooked up to medical equipment, his chest wound covered in advanced biogel. His eyes were closed, but he was alive.